Welcome back, teacher.
It's good to be
I am.
back.
I'm so glad that you're in this space. I couldn't. I've been waiting so long, so long. It seems like we've been here. It's been such a long time. I really wasn't that long ago. I just want to let everybody know I am Karla Scipio from Conversations in the Garden, and I love my sister so much that I invited her back. We have Deitra Taylor-Barclift, mental health therapist, and we are going to speak on today. Actually, we're combining two themes. As a mental health therapist, I know that Deidre can speak on it. She has a platform that celebration. She can speak on that, and I wanted her to speak today on what are we telling our daughters. And I know some women do not have any biological children, but you got nieces. We're speaking to the daughters in the supermarkets. We're
Mhm.
speaking to the ones that's on social media acting up, acting out, acting good, just acting. And we're coming from life experiences and lessons that we've learned in the journey. And what can we tell them? It's time for us to start dropping gems, in different ways, on different platforms. So, welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I enjoyed myself so much the last time.
So, you know, when you have a good conversation, where you go back and forth and you can you learn so much. You learn so much. So I really appreciate you coming back, and I'm gonna let you go on and speak. Let's talk about daughters. What are we
Okay,
telling
okay,
our daughters?
okay. So I am one of those who did not birth any biological children, but I am what I consider a bonus mom. My husband has four children, two are girls, and I've been there with them since, I guess, the youngest one since she was a baby. Um, And when you asked me this question and I was putting it into celebration, I thought about my mother and how she raised me, single parent, growing up in DC. Um, and even though she was a single parent and she worked hard, she celebrated me. That I feel like that's where it came from. I'm an only child, and so even though they talk about you being spoiled, we didn't have money, so I wasn't spoiled like that. I was spoiled more in attention. But she celebrated every holiday. She celebrated every my accomplishments. Um there was really no shortage of celebration when it came to me. And then she also encouraged me to do the things that I felt like I wanted to do, even if it was sort of like, well, Deitra, let's talk about it. That's what she would say. Let's talk about it. And then she also pushed me to try different things that I felt, I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. And she would say, well, try it a few times and then let's come back and talk about it. So she pushed me to try new and different things that I felt uncomfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And then she also really encouraged me to do some things that, were kind of outside of the box. Um, she always was like, most of the time, I would say, she was like, well, she would ask me about it. And then she would say, well, if you feel like you can do it, then go ahead and do it. So she was my teacher and my cheerleader. And I had an auntie like that, and I had a grandma like that, just kind of growing up with
Mm-hmm.
that kind of influence. And so it helped me, as I come across like other young ladies, and now being the age that I am, feeling more like an elder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
you can own
yeah.
it. You can own it. Go ahead. It's a safe space. Go ahead and own it.
3 years from 60. You know what I'm saying? And I actually look forward to it. I look forward to getting older when you have a lot of people who are like, oh no, I got to do something to stay young. I'm like, no, bring it. I'm enjoying this. Um, and enjoying being able to have different kinds of relationships with young women. Um,
Right.
especially today.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Carla, we both kind of went through the whole crack era, and I was in the inner city and I saw our families break. Um,
Yes.
I saw the, our young mothers going into the streets and then leaving the babies with the grandparents. And I was a counselor during that time. So I really got to see how we almost lost a generation of women, in terms of them being there for their children, being there for their daughters during those times, and having grandmothers having to raise these daughters.
Let me ask you a question. Let me stop you for 1 second.
Mhm.
Do you think that impacted the generation that we have now that are coming of age? Because when I think about it, the crack for us, we left New York in 1988, and I believe it came to New York maybe 87, 86, 87.
Mhm.
And so we're talking about these young people are in their 30s now, some in their late 30s,
Mhm.
even 40s, and I'm thinking they're of age where they have children that
Mhm.
are millennials. So, do you think did that have any impact in how their behavior, their perspective on life? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and the interesting thing is I haven't really looked up a lot of the research.
Hmm.
I don't know if there's even a lot of research on crack, the crack era, how it impacted the families, and then how it impacted the children who might have been either born addicted or just had parents who left the home and kind of abandoned them.
Right, the
Um,
children.
yeah, but I mean, I did work in a lot of the schools during
Hmm.
that time. Well, later when we had more so like the children of those children who were, came up through that time, kind of. I can say for DC, DC is small, but it was very black, Um, it really tore our families apart. It tore our communities apart. Um, Whereas where I could walk through the streets and you would have somebody like a guy trying to holler or flirt with you. So I
Hmm.
won't use the yeah, that would try to flirt with you. That was really maybe the worst of it. But then when crack came along, we had a lot of drive-by shootings and stuff, and people had to be in the homes, so you couldn't go outside and play. So that was a big thing too. It put the
Right.
children back in the home where they were able to go outside and play and connect and so forth. Um, I think that kind of ushered in where children didn't know how to socialize or connect. We're seeing that now, like even as we talk about like being able to connect with one another okay, like one of the things that I talk about, and I have a friend, she's young, she's probably in her early 30s. And
Hmm.
I talked to her about being able to have friends, but not just friends that you're texting and you're behind the screens with. But I don't know if you remember, we would talk on the phone all day. We had the call waiting. This may be things people don't even know about.
Yeah,
Right.
the long cord where you can take it from your mom's room all the way to your bedroom and downstairs
On like the
upstairs.
phone with like two or three people, and we were in each other's business. We knew what was going on with each other. Like, um, even in the home, there might have been fights, all those things. Like, you might have had friends who didn't have a lot of money, who didn't have food, stuff like that. And you would invite them over, or they would invite you over. We were in each other's lives in a
It's a
very
community. Basically, it was a community.
yeah. But
It
then
was
when yeah, go ahead.
no. I was just saying it was a community because I'm thinking back growing up in the '70s in New York. Like you said, we all knew each other. All knew each other's business. We knew when we can go over and eat because my girlfriend she would cook her mama's food for us and we eat, clean up the dishes, and she gonna get in trouble later because when the mama missing the food. But I mean, and we're still friends to this day,
Mhm.
but there was so much community. I even think back when, as a young nurse just coming out the nursing school, that's when all of the crack came into it. So
Mhm.
we dealt with a lot of babies. I dealt, and they had to put different systems in place, processes in place. Okay, what we're gonna do with these babies now? How we gonna make sure they okay? Because we had the heroin
Oh, right.
crisis before, so
Mhm.
some of that stuff was in place, but now it didn't affect the women as much. It didn't affect the mothers as much
Mhm.
until we crack came in, and then crack came in. I'm thinking about it with HIV.
Ah, right, right. And you
So
have people getting HIV because of the things you had to do sometimes for the crack,
right,
as women, or even being more vulnerable to to being taken advantage of sexually and so forth, you know,
right.
because of
So
that community.
yeah, so a lot of our daughters, a lot of our women now, um, has been affected by the trauma, like you said, of rejection,
Hmm.
abandonment. And I remember for me, and even as a trained professional, when I thought about trauma for a long time, I thought about trauma as, working in the emergency room and somebody's been physically um, injured.
Mm-hmm.
But it took me a minute to realize that all of this stuff really traumatized us.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think oftentimes now we actually blame our mothers
Hmm.
when our mothers didn't have the education, they didn't have the bandwidth, they didn't have a lot of things that we think that they should have had.
Yeah, and we didn't know about crack. We didn't know what that was. And
Mhm.
that was kind of like a one or two hit and you're hooked. And then as you talk about the abandonment, you talk about the rejection from your mother, that's really crucial. So how does that impact the ability to connect with yourself and with someone else? Which is kind of what we're seeing now.
Mhm.
As I was talking about before, this young lady, she had no idea what I was talking about. Yeah, I'm telling her, I'm like, yeah, we really need to move back where we're having these connections, where we're in each other's lives in a real way versus just kind of like a meeting. It almost feels like a meeting, the way um, relationships are now between women. One of the
Superficial.
shows, yeah, one of the shows, Insecure, that everybody loves, are probably going to get blasted for this. Um, to me, it showed the inability to connect around issues and things that the women were going through. Instead they would call each other names, they would brush it off, but they wouldn't talk about it. They wouldn't really talk about the hurt that they were experiencing from each other or the hurt
Mhm.
that they were experiencing from their relationships. You know, it feel like that's kind of missing. That's kind of missing now. Um, and I think a big part of that is from that crack era, because we really haven't done too much to address what happened to our families, what happened to us. And yeah.
And I think too that we, as a people, as a community, we live from crisis to crisis.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
not having the time in between to really sit down, and I'm sure there's research out there on how crack devastated, along with the different policies that were in place, that are in place, and that they're trying to replace and
Mhm.
reinstate, how it
Mhm.
helped to destroy the black community and the black families. But
Mhm.
going back to what you said about insecure, and when I think I cringe when I see the superficial normals that you have on reality TV, how black women
Mhm.
interact with each other,
With
where it's
each
all
other.
negative and there are no positive relationships that that they, I guess, that they've seen
Mhm.
or they have been involved in, to know that relationship between sisters, and I say sisters, I'm talking about, we have things in
Mhm.
common, that
Right.
it's not real and it's not healthy relationships. Saying it's real, healthy relationships are real.
Mhm.
I'm a
Yeah.
living I'm a living proof of the healthy relationships that has been in my life. So I think actually getting from people like the directors now, the producers, the young people coming up to
Mhm.
actually um,
Show
create
that.
films that show and things that shows us in a positive light.
Mm-hmm. And so okay, I'm sorry, did you?
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
And it goes back to that question that you asked about raising girls, you know, um, to be able to raise them, especially with our generation right now, like the late 50s and 60s and so forth, to help them experience what we experienced, growing up. Um, and it's not just talking, we have to show them,
Yes.
you know. Have these sister circles and show them what it's like to be in a space where women are supporting each other, in a real way. You don't have to do this by yourself. And so that's really a big thing for me as a therapist. Everything I do, even with celebration therapy, everything is really around how to build connection with self, and then how to build connection with others, in particular other women, um, in a way where, like I said, we are really entering into each other's lives in a way where we don't have to do everything by ourselves. There's a big thing around independence, self sufficiency, and we're exhausted. I'm
We
exhausted.
are. I was looking at I was looking at a something on social media where there were two older gentlemen. I would say old for me, it would be they probably were in their 40s compared to the 23-year-old and the 22-year-old. And they were this is in London, and they were both living at home with their mom, who was a single parent who raised them. So now you've gone to school, you graduated, you went to university, you have your own job, and they were upset because they felt that their mother shouldn't charge them to
Hmm,
pay the bills. So
hmm.
okay, the rent is 1,500. The mortgage is $1,500.
Right.
It's three of us living here. I'm gonna need you to give me five. I'm gonna put five. You put five. I'm gonna pay the rest of the bills. And they were upset. And I thought that was so selfish and heartbreaking for a woman who struggled throughout
Mhm.
her life to make it happen for you, and you mad because you felt like she shouldn't ask you for anything. Oh, if I feel like I want to give it to her, I'll give it to her. No,
Mhm.
but it's so important that we start having these conversations about sisterhood, about relationships, real relationships, how powerful and how supportive these relationships have been
Mhm.
in the history of our people. That's how we made it,
Mhm.
through slavery and through these different things. And people tend to see and live life through rose-colored glasses or lens, but relationship is crucial.
It is.
And
Mhm.
I was doing and this happened when I looked on television, and I don't know if you remember when there was a young lady who had gone to Mexico, and I know there's a lot of backstory to it, with a group of friends, and they end up beating her to death. And I'm like, what would make them do something like that? And why would we desire to have a relationship that meant us no good? And that was just a starting point for me to think about it. And when I thought about it, I did my research and I saw where a lot of young girls were told by their mothers and aunties that
Mm.
you shouldn't have a relationship with another woman. That's the kind, the worst kind of, and you can't trust women. So they were raised with these ideas and these ideologies and these negative perspectives about
Mhm.
relationship with other black women.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it goes back to the original question about how do we raise our daughters. Also, you have, so you talked about trauma, and you have a lot of mothers. I always say mothers were people first, and
Yes.
that just happened to have a baby. They didn't all of a sudden become, oh, now I'm this great mother because I gave birth. No, you still have a lot of the traumas that you had before you had this baby. And so one of the things, especially being a therapist, I feel like if you can get therapy, if you can get coaching, if you can get help around the traumas that you have, as you're raising your baby, do it, because we already understand that a lot of times you're passing down the trauma that you experience onto your child. So say for instance you were, and I'm going to use a really tough one, you were raped or you were molested, right? From that comes a sense of I don't feel safe, right? So what happens when you have a little girl? You teach her from this traumatic space that nothing is safe. Now, they haven't had the experience, but they did, because you are raising them still with that experience all over you. And so I've had clients, right, who were raised by mothers who were really depressed, and they came in, I'm mimicking depression, and I'm like, okay. And then when we look back, we see that there was no other cause of depression except their parent was depressed, and they were raised, like I had one who was raised and the mother would close the blinds, things were dark, they would keep the child inside and so forth, but they wouldn't go get help. So this child is not depressed. She has a parent who's depressed and mimic the symptoms. So we had to tease that out so she could be her. So that's a big part of it. Get help.
So you said something it was so valid. You said something she mimicked, and
Mhm,
sometimes we think that teaching. We just think about teaching as in the classroom, and we say, "Well, you need this textbook and you need this." But they look. We teach them by how what we say, what we do, and we have to get them to understand. Hey, you're teaching them.
mhm,
When you say you can't go here, you can't do this, and you have no reason why, but because of your experience. I had one person, um I was just sharing that experience. We need to encourage our children
mhm,
to try different things,
mhm, mhm,
to go different places, because when you hold them
mhm,
in a spot because you have this fear something's gonna happen. I'm like, listen, if you're gonna die, if you're supposed to die in Israel, you're gonna die in Israel. If you're supposed to die in Atlanta, you're gonna die in Atlanta. It's, there's nothing that you can do. I mean, there are some things that you can be cautious. I'm not gonna go deliberately put myself in harm's way, but because your mind is closed, you try
mhm,
to keep them in their little small space. But no, as parents, we're supposed to encourage our children to level up. We're supposed go out there,
mhm,
explore, be
mhm,
safe, meet
mhm.
different people, learn about different cultures, speak different languages.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up once again in a little city, DC, and it was surprising to me the number of people who wouldn't even leave the city. Some of them wouldn't even leave their own neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Um, and that's taught. Like you said, whatever happened, and I mean, I had this, so I'm gonna be, my grandmother was like, I'm an adventurous person, so I like to go explore, see different things, experience different things. She was like, why do you have to always travel so much, right? My mom was like, go. She sent me to Mexico when I was in 10th grade. Um, I was in Girl Scouts, so I got to go on different trips. I went to
Hmm.
Maine, I went to Arizona, places like that in high school. Um, so then when it came time for me to go to college, I left home and went to Tennessee. She encouraged that. But you have so many parents who are afraid themselves. And so they put that fear on their children.
Yes.
And so then the children are like, they feel stifled. I mean, I have a friend who's older than me, and she kind of struggled with leaving home. I mean, she's older than me, because her family stayed so close. And I saw a lot of that growing up. So like you said, I agree. We have to teach our children to explore. Like you said, you can't mitigate all danger.
You
You
can't.
just can't. um but I don't know if we're supposed to be living our life like that. I was reading a book, and it was a person they were observing. They were in a bank, and they were saying they were observing two mothers. There was a white mother and a black mother. And the white mother with her child, the child was like going, touching this, touching that, and all. And the white mother was like, didn't have any problems with that. So the child was exploring their environment. The black mother was like, no, stand here, be here. Don't, and I get, we don't want them all over the place. But what we're teaching is that nothing is safe. You have to stay so close. And there is, I mean, okay, being honest, we are black, right?
I was about to say,
I
was
know,
that
I
was
know,
that
I
something?
know. Hey, we black. And so there is danger. We do see the craziness, from people who see us and feel like we're a threat and call the police or whatever. We see that kind of stuff, you know. So I get it. There is a balance with that. And at the same time, we don't want to hold our children so close that they,
They ain't know what they good. They wouldn't know what to do. For me, I send my kids. My oldest daughter came home one day. And she brought this piece of paper. We had just moved to Georgia, and she said, I can go to any middle school I want to. And I said, let me see that. This is M to M because I got on another program, but at that time we were still struggling. We didn't have the transportation to get her to the school every day. So I looked at this as from majority to minority. I said, what? And I thought about it. I said, you know what? Even though it took them an hour to get to school, the
Mhm,
school that they were going to had a diverse population,
mhm,
and I knew that the world that they were going to live in
mhm,
is very diverse. You know,
mhm,
you can go around the planet in one day. You know, it's global. We live in a global world now. You
mhm,
can take a plane and you can be in another on the other side of the world in 24 hours for most far away places. So I allowed them to go to that school because of the diverse population, and
mhm.
they got to learn how to deal with people, different people. Everybody's not going to look like you,
Right.
and you got to learn how to deal with them, how to speak with them. Because like just you said, you observed the white mother and the white daughter. I also observed the young girl, my son's school. I had gone to pick him up, and they were upset about the cafeteria. And the little white girl was telling her classmates, "This is what we're gonna do," and she was already planning a protest. And I know people are gonna say, "Well, we can't do that because we black," but yes, we can.
Right. Right.
Because
Right.
we are cultivating leaders and
Mhm,
people who think for themselves
mhm,
instead of
mhm,
having for people to tell you how to behave.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like for me, going away to college, that was incredible. I mean, I had already gone other places, so I didn't have like a fear of white people, but I did have a healthy caution. You know, um, I felt like, and I think part of that also was growing up in DC, and it
Hmm.
gave me the confidence to know that I could do anything, because I saw it. I saw me doing everything.
Uh-huh.
Um, so when I went to Tennessee, and it was a little Christian college, and there was probably a handful of black folks in there. I hung out with the black people, I hung out with white people, I hung out with Caribbeans, I hung out with everybody. I just wanted to soak it all up.
Hmm.
And everybody was friendly. I mean, I had a few racist stuff happen, but it wasn't anything where I was like, okay, I didn't make it a value about me, you know. Um I don't, it wasn't even that big of a deal. But for me, I was like, oh, I want to go to Florida. I want to go. It's so funny. I had this one couple, and for some reason, they just really liked me. Once again, we're in college, and they had a boat, and they let me drive the boat. I didn't have no license, and I'm just driving this boat. But I had such amazing experiences, and I know that came from having the mother that I have, who was like, go, go. She grew up in a little town, Wilson, North Carolina.
Hmm.
So she saw me and saw that I had a lot of opportunities to have different experiences. And so now, I've been to Africa. I've been to Hawaii. I spent 10 months in Guam working with the military. Like now, to me, the world is open to me to go and do whatever it is that
And
I want.
explore. Yeah,
Can you imagine
I
though how
agree with
big
you.
that is compared to this one little space in a city? That's all I have. Imagine the opportunities that are open now to this little girl, right? Because she can explore the whole world versus Northwest DC, you know?
Yeah. And those are some of the things that we're teaching our daughters, to explore the world.
Hmm.
Take advantage of the opportunities that come your way. It may never come again.
Hmm.
Get out there and see what happens on the other side of the world. I think for me, coming from the Caribbean,
Hmm.
you know, a lot. And then too, I had people in my family who had traveled. My uncle was gone. He got on. He was part of that wind rush. My godmother had gone. My mother left. So I was exposed to people from all over the Western End. And I was just exposed to different people. And then New York City sealed the cave.
Yeah,
New York was so diverse.
everybody.
I had people, my friends, just on my block alone, you had people from the Caribbean, you had people from Haiti, people from Trinidad, Jamaica, Panama, everywhere, Americans down south. I mean, all over. So
Hmm. Hmm.
I wanted to man. Then I married a man. He was just as adventurous, probably even more adventurous than me, because my children always say they got this sense of adventure from their dad. I'm like, no, you got it from both of us. But he never met a stranger, so he would always go up and talk to different people and do different things, and even. I mean, he would go and have breakfast with the mayor of one of the small towns here. I'm like, how you met that man? I was doing some work in his house. I'm like, you know what? But we have to be so mindful of what we say, what we do, because the young people are looking at us, and we need to utilize the experiences, the life lessons, the opportunities to share our journeys, so
Hmm.
they know that there's more to the world than what they see now. A lot of them don't know their history. They don't know the past.
Hmm. Yeah, I tell my babies, you know, I'm like, this is a great opportunity right now to go and experience and do different things. If you decide to go to college, great. If you decide not to go to college, that's okay too. Because you have a safety net right now with us. And I just don't believe in that whole piece of, okay, you're 18, get out, time to go,
Right.
I feel like, go when you're ready. And like you said also, but you can contribute to the house, you know, because we're doing this together.
Yeah.
And you go, and I told my sons, my youngest son, because he decided he didn't want to go to college right now. I'm like, go and explore, experience some things. You can always come home.
Yeah.
Always come home. So if
Yeah.
you go out here and you mess up and you just, whatever, you can always come
Yeah.
home.
The door is always open.
Mhm.
For them, and I think that's one of the things that we observe, we talk about, that we laugh about other people, but um, one of the things I learned is that community. When we work together as a community, it elevates the whole community. It elevates the individuals, and it also elevates the community. So, and you mentioned something else. Well, we're gonna wrap up. When you talked about if he didn't want to go to college, I'm telling people now. I've seen in college is not mandatory. College may not be for everybody.
Mhm. Mhm.
It,
I
and
know.
it ain't mandatory, y'all.
We're gonna get beat up for that one. Because I mean, look, okay.
It's
So
not.
also, and I know we're about to go. Also, I'm looking at the time of where we are right now. We're in a very interesting time.
Yes.
Um, I have friends who have lost their jobs and so forth, who just knew that they were going to be in these government positions and then they were going to retire and like had a plan. And right now it's kind of shaky.
Yeah.
And so the people who got the certifications and so forth and can still like people are going to always need to have their grass cut, landscaping. People are always going to need a plumber. People are always going to need,
Electrician.
you
Yeah.
know, I don't, if you have a home, there are certain things that certain jobs that are always going to be there. So get the certifications and, you know, you don't have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans and go do that. Be your own boss. You can do
Right.
that. And then also, like you said, community. Like right now, we moved in with a friend. We did that intentionally because we wanted to like, how do we um create something where our resources can go further. And so that's what we did. Young people can do that. You know, it's so much easier for them to do that. And I feel like this what can be should be teaching our daughters as well. Once again, connection, community.
Yes.
How to like you
Yes.
if you're a single parent and you have other single parent friends, why not figure out? I mean, there was a movie called Single Moms, or a show called Single Moms, and they showed how these single mothers would get together. One person would say, "Okay, I'm going to babysit the children this month while you all get together and have a good time." And this is what they did each month. Why not? You
You
know?
know, we this world has become so individualized
Mm-hmm.
and increasingly so, at least from my perspective, where we think it's about me. It's about me. But we can, we're here to help each other out.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
remember as a young mother and wife in New York City, I was making some kind of dish and I didn't have all the ingredients. I was like, I called my neighbor across the street, my friend, because I would take when she was going to school, I would take her daughter to school with me because she couldn't take her daughter. I mean, that's the kind of community it was. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, girl, I need some tomatoes and some onions. She's like, hold on, I got some. I'm coming. And she, because I had just had a baby. She came across the street with the tomatoes and the onions, and I had my food was done. And whatever she needed from me, and I had it, she would get it. And who was talking about that? My pastor was talking about that in church. How growing up, what he saw his grandparents do. How you can get some sugar, you can get some eggs. This one got the milk, and he got the milk. Okay, here goes some flour. We
Yeah,
gotta go back. We all gonna win in the end. It's enough for all of us, so we gonna win. But we gotta
exactly.
go back to being a community, and it
Yes.
starts with each individual.
Yeah. So I'm like this is what I'm teaching young ladies. This is what I'm teaching, my children, everyone I come into contact with, because I'm feeling like we're at that time where it's really needed. I mean, I feel like we're going to make it the more we're able to come together
Yes,
and share our resources together. And we know about it. We grew up with it. So I feel like, us in our 50s and 60s, we have such an amazing, rich experience and information, that we can really help usher back in
you're right.
us connecting in some real resourceful ways to help us through some of these things we're going through right now.
So true, so true.
And
I can,
celebrate.
yes, celebration.
Still
You
celebrate.
know, I concur. I can concur. I concur.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank
Yo,
you.
thank you, teacher, for coming on. And this is part two. We probably gonna have multiple parts. Y'all, we're
I'm
going to
here
make a
for it. This is
documentary.
fun.
And you can tell them how they can reach you, Deidre.
Okay. So my website is Grandma's Porch. Yeah, www.grandmasporch.com. Also, I am on Instagram, Grandma's Porch. I'm on Facebook as well. And if you type up Grandma's Porch, or you put my name in, the internet, it'll come up. My number is 404-993-7156. That's my business number. So many ways to reach me, and I look forward to
Yes.
anybody who wants to connect.
To most definitely connect with Deidre. You will definitely love her.
Thank
Celebration
you.
therapy. If you guys go follow my YouTube channel, Conversations in my garden. My name is Karla Scipio, and you know we have a love and a passion for women. See y'all next time.